Hi everyone, welcome to episode 28 of The Green Room. I'm here with Nick, who is on camera.
Hello, James.
And Harry we've got as well, who's still off camera.
I mean, why ruin the illusion?
Okay, fine. So we've been going for a while, and we've been sort of bringing our energy-saving news to people and how you improve the energy efficiency of your home. And so we're going to continue with that today. Nick?
Can I make a point?
You can.
So to the feedback on the sound, we're going to look a little bit unnatural when we make eye contact, but the key thing is that we will try and focus the way we speak onto the microphones direct, so the sound comes across in a more consistent manner for you.
And we may get new microphones, maybe for Christmas.
Yes, if Santa is very good to us.
Or a new sound engineer? Anyone?
Or a new sound? No. No. Anyway, right, if you want to listen to previous podcasts, or watch us, in fact, how would you go about that, Nick?
The best way, and the only way, well, not the only way, but my way, is I go onto the Green Age website, so that's www.thegreenage.co.uk. At the top, we have the link to our podcast. I open that link, and then up pops up various methods of how we can be listened to or watched to.
Just because you're speaking into the microphone in a weird way doesn't mean you need to speak in a weird way.
No, it's just that was quite a poignant point.
That is just how he talks.
I will just emphasise it a bit more.
Okay, good. Sorry, continue. So they're on the Green Age website.
Yes, and you can go on to Podbean, TuneIn Radio, Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly don't have an Apple product. Or you can go on to Spotify.
James, do you have an Apple product?
I do. I've got a new iPhone. I'm very excited.
Hasn't stopped talking about it.
There's another one, I forget, but...
Stitcher,
that's it.
And how would you watch us?
On YouTube.
Yeah. So you can go and see us, see my colourful shirts.
Very popular mode, yes. And you can ask us questions down there below, comments and questions. We do actually come back to comments and questions.
And also we like the comments and questions. They're not always
even if they're negative. Yeah. We like negative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I leave those ones.
Right, so we're episode 28. So what are we talking about today?
The headline is, so we had, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday actually. Yesterday, we are in the midst of a general election in a few weeks' time. So obviously we're having lots of different policies coming out. And
what was that lady called? Who was like, "Oh, not again!" When last time the election. Do you remember this?
I know exactly who you mean, but I've got no idea what her name is.
Not another one.
The silly woman, the one with Gordon Brown.
No. Anyway, right, sorry.
It's a meme,
Continue.
really.
Oh, okay. So it's about Labour's energy policy plans, because they were quite, when you look to the figures and stuff, quite ambitious plans about the ways forward for energy efficiency and, I guess, targeting the homes and leaky homes, energy inefficient homes, and trying to bring up those energy efficiency standards. So the purpose of the podcast, or a lot of the podcasts we've spent just going through that, but also I don't think there was a lot of new stuff in there, but it was just, I think, more money promised towards it, because we're going to talk about the Green Deal.
Well, it is the Green Deal in its process, but it has got a new name.
What is a new name?
The new name. So Labour's new policy is called Warm Homes for All, right? And what they're pledging, if they were to win the election, is to provide energy-saving upgrades. So things like loft insulation, draft proofing, new double glazing, new heating systems, in an effort to reduce our carbon emissions. Mm-hmm. And obviously we've got our carbon neutral target as a country now by 2050. Mm-hmm. But they just want to cut everything by 10%, so our carbon emissions by 10% in the next sort of 10 or so years, so by 2030. By the 2030s?
Yes.
Would you describe them as the 30s now?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, right. It's yet to happen. But anyway, so in about 10 years, they want to cut it by 10%. So that's their big plan.
Yeah, because currently at the moment, the policy for the current government it's been very focused towards the combustion side. So in terms of boilers and heating systems, very little on the insulation, which is fair to say.
Yeah. And we like a fabric first policy, don't we?
So very good on that.
Yeah.
But let's before we go on to the specifics of their policy, why don't we talk a little bit about the Green Deal?
Okay, so the Green
Because
Deal.
I know it's one of your favourite things to talk about.
I do. I enjoy the Green Deal. So the Green Deal was launched in the early 10s. Sorry, in about 2011. And basically, the idea behind this was it was a revolutionary concept that you would get energy saving measures installed in your property, and these would be paid for by energy savings created on your energy bills. So, for example, if I put a new boiler in, so I've got an old boiler and it costs me, I don't know, £1,000 a year for my heating bill. Right? I put a new boiler in and it decreases my heating bill to about 800 quid. So therefore, in theory, I've got a saving of £200 a year. So what they're doing is they're taking those savings annually and basically using that to pay for the boiler costs.
Yeah.
So that was the basis. Now, it was limited by this thing called the Golden Rule.
The Golden Rule said, if you go to one of your first ever videos,
Go on.
that you could not. So, in terms of the help that you receive from the Green Deal fund or finance,
Yeah.
could not be more than the expected lifetime savings of that measure in the first place.
Yes.
So, what that means is, so say for instance, what you've just said. So, the boiler is £200 a year saving. The life of the measure is 12 years.
Yeah.
So, if you take one number, multiply by the other, you get
Don't know. I wasn't really listening to the numbers you were talking about.
£2,400.
Yes, you do. Yes.
So
I did maths A level.
very good.
I didn't do very well.
But so £2,400 would go towards the borrowing cost of installing that new heating system. Now, the problem with that is you go, well, actually, in terms of when we were talking about boilers, it roughly cost that to swap out a boiler.
Yeah.
However, the problem is interest. So
Well, it was interest and setup fees.
Yes.
So to organise someone to get this boiler installed, and to get a finance company to do that, it's about 700 quid just to do the paperwork around
Yes.
it. So suddenly, of my 2,400,
and that's before you even go into the interest.
yeah, exactly. You don't get a huge amount, and there were two interest terms within it. So one was 12 years for measures, as you say, like boilers and that sort of thing, and then for the bigger measures like insulation, there were 25 years.
Yes.
So if the interest rate is bad over 12 years, it's bloody awful over 25 years. And so by the time you look at it, actually the funding you got towards it, despite the energy savings potentially being quite big, meant you got very, very little help.
And also, it's worth pointing out, so that's an extremely ambitious saving figure for swapping out a boiler
Yes.
on an average size house. So actually, in reality, you probably see, say, £25 or £30 a year.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realise. I think the bit that they didn't take into account was the potential future energy price rises. So they were assuming that over those 12 years, energy prices would stay the same. And already energy prices are considerably higher than they were. And we expect those to continue to go up as, different mechanisms and different processes are in place to replace the energy supply within our grid, I suppose.
Well, Labour's plan predicts that they're going to go down if we do all this.
Well, they could, right? If we increase energy efficiency, so if we go with our envelope first sort of mechanism, i.e., we're trying to increase the energy efficiency of walls and roofs and windows and that sort of thing, i.e., we keep the heat in, then potentially they would come down. Heating bills would come down. LED lighting, another. It's a real easy thing to do, and it can make big savings.
Yeah.
The issue is the actual cost of buying the energy is going up. So despite the fact you use less of it, the price to buy in the first place is increasing, and that's where the issue lies.
So basically, just to summarise the Green Deal, in theory, from the headlines when they launched it in the 10s, as you said, a novel measure, a novel policy, but in principle, as we did. I mean, we did hundreds and hundreds of these Green Deal assessments, and when we got to the point when people were discussing about the Green Deal plans,
Yeah.
just when they saw the setup costs and the complexity of it, people just dropped out, and in the end, the take-up rate was really low. So
I think there were other reasons it failed as well. So number one was the interest rates were high.
yes,
So that was bad. But also, so lack of funding because of the savings were smaller than people would have thought.
Yes.
Interest rates were high. But also, you're putting this loan onto your energy bill, right? So you're putting onto your energy meter. So when you come to sell your property, someone else is taking on this loan.
So actually, if it's in the private rental sector, it works if the policy was simple enough, and you could borrow up to the saving measure
Until the person comes to sell a house.
But in the sorry, not the private rentals, but the owner occupied sector,
Yes.
it's because you get more, how do you say, turnover of properties.
Yes.
You would have to potentially within a decade period.
Yeah, but if a mortgage company, so if I go to a bank and ask for a mortgage, and they say, right, you're buying a house here, and there is an interest, there's some finance attached to that house, you would obviously be a little bit nervous because you're like, okay, well, what is that? And then they explain it, and you might use your house very differently, so you might actually want it at 30 degrees all the time and have. It doesn't quite work. I think they would be very nervous, and we came across
unless you get
examples.
mass adoption, but we didn't get mass adoption, so
No.
it would scare a lot of people.
No, so it basically, in the end, the Green Deal didn't work.
Yes,
Yeah,
and then it didn't work, and it was repackaged, and by the time it was repackaged, and the people that repackaged it saw how complex it was, and you couldn't really do anything unless you changed the law behind it.
But it was all about this concept of putting a loan on the electricity meter rather than the individual, right? And that is the fundamental thing here. So rather than me trying to go and get a loan on myself, it's all about being on the electricity meter. So therefore, whoever is using that home, whoever is using the heating or the electricity, is paying for these measures. Mm-hmm. And that is the basis, moving back to where we are now, of Labour's Warm Homes for All energy plan.
Yes,
They want to take advantage of this idea.
yes. So that's one element to it. So they've talked about the predicted savings, basically being used to pay for it. They've also talked about means testing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, people that are in the lowest kind of income brackets, which are yet to sort of be defined, the policies and obviously the packages they put together would be quite favourable for take up for those people. But then, if you can't actually afford it, then they would offer, like in Scotland, if I'm not wrong, just obviously long term but low interest loans.
No interest loans. 0 interest loans.
Which is how it should be. That is a brilliant way to get all this stuff installed. Because that's really encouraging it. People are still going to pay it back. Yeah, but you're not restricted by this golden rule, which is this kind of mechanism that locking people out. I guess the issue is some people won't be able to get the loans because their credit history won't be sufficient. And so you're locking some people out of getting...
But most of the people whose credit history aren't sufficient would be in the lower bracket anyway. So, I mean, it's
So they
split
get
into...
they get the
grant.
means-tested grant.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that it's split up, I love a fact and figure.
Yes.
So the total cost that they projected for this, for all 27 million homes in the UK, is £250 billion. 60 billion of that would go to grants for the lower income bracket. And that's
but
gone.
this is over. So 250 billion.
Yeah.
Is over 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's 25 billion pounds a year, and
Yeah.
our tax receipts is 700 billion. That is a decent whack of our.
Well, this is their argument: is that 60 billion of it is 60 billion of it. Fair enough, gone. The other 190 billion. They think that will be recouped for various different things. Jobs, we'll talk about that. But also that 190 billion will all be in interest-free loans. So theoretically, it all comes back.
So
Yeah.
So for me, that's the elephant in the room. So when they've said said the energy bills won't go up, but you either pay it through general taxation or you pay it through a levy on the energy bills.
Which is what has happened in previous grants, right? So if you ever get an energy bill through and you read it, if you look at the statement, it gives you sort of a pie chart, and it says the split between what your energy costs are, how much you're paying the wholesaler, all this sort of stuff. And then it says, the green tariffs or the bit you're contributing towards these kind of funds. And it is a little slice of it. So I think you're right. I think that's probably where it would be. And that becomes problematic, I guess, for some. But for others, very happy to pay it.
Yeah, and I don't know then what would happen, because I've seen where Harry's briefed us. So they've talked about this will go towards installation of heat pumps and solar PV and stuff like that. So solar PV from one side, but on the heating side, because already we've got the renewable heat incentive, would that be in addition to the renewable heat incentive?
Well, the renewable heat incentive...
Would that be...
The renewable heat incentive is essentially rewarding rich people who want to install, energy-efficient heating systems, isn't it? As far as I can tell. I think when we spoke to the guys at, as it previously was, DEC, who was setting this up, they all talked about, when the initial brief came in, they were trying to find a way to increase uptake of energy efficiency. And someone in the room was like, well, what about helping those in fuel poverty? And they're like, no, we are trying to increase the uptake of energy efficient heating systems. So it's a pretty clear way that I would set up. If that was my brief, all I've got to do is try and increase the uptake. I'm basically giving people money to install these heating systems. So I imagine under this scheme, that would have to be canned. And we've had problems with the RHI anyway in places like Ireland, where,
Northern Ireland.
Yeah, where it was just such a huge obligation, such huge payments that people were due to get, basically just got canned.
It's because of biomass, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was ridiculous. You hear about these chicken farmers who install biomass, and they're basically getting paid to produce heat. So why would you shut the windows? You make more money if you're opening windows. And so they would basically have the heaters on full blast, get paid more money. Just the whole thing stank.
We have a whole episode on the RHI if anybody wants to go and have a look.
But anyway.
So let's just reel off the benefits. So in the manifesto pledge, so according to Labour, they believe that by 2030, be about just under 500,000 jobs, so 450,000 million jobs.
I think it's interesting how they split that up, though. 450,000, 100,000 jobs, but 250,000 skilled jobs in terms of fitting, insulation, plaster, carpentry, blah, 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 blah. But then 200,000 of the jobs they've just said sort of across the economy, which...
Yeah.
What?
I guess that would be production, so manufacturing...
Bit vague.
Manufacturing,
it is slightly
transportation.
vague, I'd say. But that's the great thing about a manifesto.
You never have to deliver.
You never have to... Well, that... And there's not a huge amount of meat on the bone, I'd say. Anyway, so we've got 450,000 new jobs, which would be awesome.
Yes.
Right? Anywhere where we're producing new jobs is fantastic. Yes, we don't know quite where they're coming from, but just go with it. And it's fair to say, when we went to EcoBuild in the first couple of years, and it was at the Excel Centre, it filled 2 massive halls full of, energy-saving measures and that sort of thing. And then the government killed the solar feed-in tariff, and it suddenly became 1 hall, and then the following year it became even smaller than that.
Yeah.
So you can see that when the funding is there, and it's the same as everything, but as soon as funding is available...
It gets abused.
It does get abused, but it does increase the amount of installers pop up, people
So
doing
tell the
work.
viewers and the listeners about the Green Deal Home Improvement Fund.
So the Green Deal Home Improvement Fund was launched at about the same time as the Green Deal. So the Green Deal was a funding mechanism through your energy bill, which we've already talked about. The Green Deal Home Improvement Fund was a grant. Now, normally grants are means tested. The Green Deal Home Improvement Fund wasn't. Basically, what you had to do was get a certain percentage of your house covered in insulation or the new heating system, whatever, and you got a great big grant. Mm-hmm. Now, the big one that really worked was that there's external wall insulation, right? So if you were to put external wall insulation on more than 25% of your house, you could get a grant up to £6,000. So, in terms of the abuse here, what people were doing was basically because they could get, if they charged £8,000, you would get a grant for 6,000, right? So the customer would pay 2,000. They could suddenly charge what would normally cost £2,000 to do a job. Oh,
it's your coffee machine, but that's
Who
fine.
was on turning off
You
the
can
coffee
carry-
machine duty?
Time. So what was happening was they were charging £8,000 for a £2,000 job, knowing that the customer would still only pay the 2,000, but they could pocket 6,000 instead of £2,000.
Yes.
And so because it wasn't means tested as well, everyone jumped onto it. You know, it was incredibly popular, and this thing lasted about 4 days when it launched, and then they launched different tranches of funding. And these lasted 4 a day, literally a day.
So it was boom and bust. It was basically a boom and bust type of
very
setup,
much
basically.
so, very much so. And the problem is, you know, the energy saving industry, the kind of insulation industry, the heating industry, they don't have fantastic reputations anyway. And when you have schemes like that, obviously you see massive uptake, which is in principle a good idea. But the guys are setting up companies because they know funding's going to come along. They take all these grants, they abuse the sort of customers' relationships, essentially.
Goodwill, understanding.
Yeah, put all the money in their
Oversell
pocket,
it.
and then they close the company.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't need to be done this way, but government policy, another time, they just fail time and time again.
But for me, I think that Green Deal Home Improvement Fund, I think the benefit was set too high. So what I would have done is I would have said, right, okay, so if you want to do external wall insulation or internal wall insulation, you get £1,000.
Yes.
Then at least there's some sort of incentive to do it.
Yeah, agreed. Or you get 10% of the cost of the works.
Yes.
Right, which is really simple. Everyone can understand it. I know that it's still open to fraud to a certain extent because suddenly the works becomes more expensive. But if I get 10% of it and I'm a customer, I would shop around and I would go with, you know, if I get 3 quotes and go the middle quote because not cheapest, not most expensive, then you should be paying the kind of right amount and you get 10% back. And that kind of works for everyone. But
the economics of external insulation work because we know if you add 100 mil insulation to the external or the internal face of your property, it's going to have a massive impact on your heating bills. And we know energy prices are rising, they're effectively doubling in cash terms every 7-8 years. So you know, with a bit of benefit, you said the 10%, you put the measure in, you will actually see the economic return on that. And actually, if you do external, you'll also get a facelift and external improvement to the look of your property as well.
This kind of fabric first approach that Labour are taking, on as well as kind of a renewable generation encouragement, is all kind of ties together two of the big things that I think they think voters are concerned about, which is climate change and energy bills. So they've managed to kind of put those together in this policy, in that it's not just about cheaper energy, it's about less energy.
But the other thing they're missing again, and I talk about this every week, is they're pushing. So yes, they're looking to increase the efficiency of the thermal envelope, but they're also looking at electric heating systems, so things like heat pumps, that sort of thing. Now, unless you're producing your electricity from solar or wind turbines, you are basically getting electricity on the whole from either nuclear or gas.
But do you not think that we need to be looking forward to a future where more of our energy comes from electricity? Do you not think if we put the infrastructure in place now, if we put the electric heating systems in homes now, then we'll be in a much better place in 10, 15 years when we have better battery storage and we're able to do more with electric generation?
100% in 10 or 15 years. But
it's going to take that long to put it in.
It may well do, but if I can go and get an electric heating system put in today, and it costs me 4 times more to run than a gas central heating system. Right?
Depends on the heating system, not if it's a heat pump, not if it's
okay,
a solar
but do you have
system.
a spare £10,000 to put in a heat pump?
No, that's why Labour are giving it to you.
Right, exactly. But this is it.
But it
right?
won't, the point is that's not really going to be relevant for, you know, the urban or certainly even some suburban homes. Heat pumps, because you won't have the space.
Exactly. I think as soon as you look at heating systems, I think it becomes a really, really tricky situation. Because, yes, 10 years, you're right. 10 years we should be looking for. We should all be installing electric heating systems. But why, oh, why would I do that if it cost me 4 times more to run it right now today.
I think they're playing the long game here. I think they're trying to prepare the houses for the.
If that's the case, sorry to interrupt, but if that's the case, then energy poverty, which is all based on how much you earn and the cost of energy bills, etc., where we have a number now in the UK of people in energy poverty.
I believe it's 2.55 million in England in 2016.
There's 2.55 million. If everyone moves to electric heating and they suddenly fall into energy poverty, you do not want to be a Labour government that does that, right? So you don't want that to go up to 4 million people on your watch.
But it's not like they're not putting in electric radiators. They're not putting in stuff like that. They're putting in, like I say, heat pumps, solar panels, insulation.
But where does the funding go? No, insulation, on board with.
Yeah.
100% on board with insulation, right? But where does the money come? And I know it's from grants. I know we've talked about where the money is going to come from. But I think it's hugely expensive to install that, and I think it'll throw a whole load more people into energy poverty by doing that in the short term. And yes, longer term, I think it's a fantastic idea. But right now, it's going to hurt people. Going back to this, I think as a concept, it's not a bad idea. So there's going to be grant systems for people who are in energy poverty and who are in particular low income, households. There is going to be a interest-free loan for those who can afford to pay for these measures.
Which will have to be funded from somewhere.
It'll have to be funded from somewhere, but if they can get that and then they're installing those heating systems from that, then I get it.
It's coming from the National Transformation Fund.
The National Transformation Fund that doesn't yet exist, I'm assuming.
Will have to come from general taxation.
And so money has to be put into that fund to therefore pay it out. And I don't... Genuinely, we have in the UK the oldest housing stock pretty much in the world. If you go to America and a house is 10 years old, they knock it down and rebuild it. Because why have something old? And we really like our bricks and mortar, and it's a really nice thing. You walk down the street and there's some lovely houses.
But what's wrong with allowing giving people more access to interest rates are near negative interest rates?
Yeah,
near negative. I mean, not near zero.
That'd be awesome.
Why not give people more products out? They encourage the finance industry to offer long-term low-interest loans like they do in Germany.
Yeah.
Why have to give free interest?
No, I'm absolutely on board with that as well. I think people are willing to take short-term, low-interest
but then
loans.
but then put the incentive somewhere else through council tax.
I think
let's remember that German energy prices have gone up massively in the past.
But that's because they, how do you say, copped up their energy mix, because they just said, right, we just want to turn nuclear power off
and go
renewable, and they just had massive problems with the grid.
But I think as a concept, I think it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
But I think as most manifesto ideas go, it hasn't been fully costed. They haven't really worked out where the funding's going to come from. But it'd be great for a government to do something, because there are more and more people naturally falling into fuel poverty. So as wages, aren't increasing massively, but energy prices are increasing, that is a genuine issue. So
let's talk a little bit about fuel poverty.
Go on then,
shall we? So, and Harry can interject at times. So basically, in the UK, we have England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And from what I understand,
for the moment,
and from what I understand, every home nation has got its own definition and statistics and way of measuring fuel poverty. So concentrating on England for a second, fuel poverty in England basically is a function of how much so income, household income, I assume.
Yeah.
The current price of energy, fuel, so electricity and gas.
I mean, those both go into it, as well as the energy efficiency of your home, because obviously that affects how much fuel you're using.
But the government, as far as I can tell, are always trying to change the exact definition of it to take people out of fuel poverty.
Well, so at the moment in England, what's interesting is that they define it as anyone that once you've paid your fuel bills, if you are below the poverty line, if your income is below the poverty line, then you're in fuel poverty. And that's why in 2016, their numbers are about half easily the rest of the UK, about 11%, because the rest of the UK is using
much stricter.
The rest of the UK, although they're all slightly different, they all use variations on the idea that if a household spends 10% or more of their income on energy, they're in fuel poverty.
Okay.
There are variations on that in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. But do you want to guess the percentages of fuel poverty in the most recent statistics we've got?
Yes, I do.
Wales?
18%.
23.
Okay, this is a good game.
Scotland?
Higher. 27%.
35.
Jesus wept.
So more than a third.
That was from 2014, though. That was the
Okay.
most recent one we could find. And Northern Ireland.
Higher again. 42.
Do you know it's come down in 2009? It was 44%. Now it's 22.
But that must be because they're redefining it.
Yes, it is exactly because they redefined it. So if you think about fuel poverty, I'll link to an article we have on it. But if you hear about fuel poverty, just recognise that just because some country has a lower rate than another one, it does not mean necessarily that those people are paying less or those people are better off fuel-wise.
Fine. And okay, so just moving. So obviously we've talked about Labour there and their policy. Conservatives haven't really done anything yet, have they?
Well, I haven't seen their manifesto yet, but they've obviously been critical of the Labour policy. They've said, what you've said, it's not been costed yet, and it will just add more burden to taxpayer and the energy user.
They said it would wreck the economy and put up bills for hardworking families and prevent any real changes, any real progress on climate change.
Okay, fine. So as soon as that comes out, we'll talk about what their plan is. So is there anything else you want to cover in that, or are we going to go on to... We've got a good news story this
Actually,
week.
let's go... also, potentially good news, but could be quite expensive news story in Bristol.
Okay, go on.
So Bristol plans to ban all diesel cars by 2021 in its sort of central district.
Okay.
So
is that good news?
A
new diesel car.
So you wouldn't be able to even drive a new diesel.
No, but a new diesel car is really efficient.
Yes.
They're quite clean.
So you'd be able to drive a car in central London if it's
Right.
Euro 6 diesel, but
and then
not.
you hit the outskirts of Bristol and you park up and you walk into town.
That's it. Yeah.
That sounds a really sensible idea.
So I think initially it's going to be piloted out to private users, but the issue obviously is, because.
How rubbish would that be? If
Well,
you drive a
well,
diesel car
it is
and you get
rubbish.
selected in that pilot.
Well, no, it's rubbish if, say, you've got to drive someone to hospital or,
Well, you just do it and you take the fine.
yeah.
I don't think that's good news. I just think that is the worst news. That's just so crap.
You're such a pessimist.
No, I'm not. Oh, come on. Imagine getting you are involved in this pilot scheme and you drive a diesel. You'd be like, oh, no, but my
I
next door
use public
neighbour drives
transport,
a
James,
diesel
because
and
I love
doesn't."
the environment. And because I can't drive.
But my next door neighbour drives he drives a diesel, but he's a taxi driver and he gets exempt.
So there are exemptions.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
maybe we'll have to see a rise in taxi registrations.
Should we do the real good news story?
So yeah, that was it was
Sorry,
some sort of story.
I've pissed on your good news story. There, but
No,
we'll talk about it.
I think it's a story that might drive more debate. That's why I
Okay.
wanted to bring it up.
Let's talk about what's his name? Topher White.
Topher, he's American. Of course, it's Topher.
Topher White. So Topher White is the fella in charge of Rainforest Connect, and what he's doing is he is taking these old mobile phones. I don't know if I've mentioned I've got a new mobile phone.
Oh, really? A new
Anyway,
iPhone,
no,
is
no,
it?
so-
Recycle your old mobile phone.
I gave it to my mother-in-law. Anyway, so he's taking these old mobile phones and he puts them on trees, and they have lots of little solar panels around them, and it kind of looks like a flower on a tree. It's quite a cool thing, so you should Google it. But what it does is when illegal loggers get within sort of 3 kilometres of this thing, or it picks up illegal loggers within 3 kilometres, picks up the noises and sends messages to the rangers and that sort of thing. So they can then go and stop this illegal logging, because 90% of logging in rainforest is illegal. So this guy is basically setting up these things, and as soon as it's done it, there's an alert gets sent out to the relevant people.
Mm-hmm.
They go and then prevent this deforestation, which I think is pretty cool. I think
Yes.
it's a really nice idea to use
Yes.
old mobile phones.
I think it was an interesting project because it was basically born from the fact that when you're out in those rainforests, then you can't call anyone, but a lot of them have really good Wi-Fi. And really good, well, not Wi-Fi, 4G and connectivity like that, and that's what your old phones are using. And it's I looked
I hope
at
he
how
doesn't
much.
try and use my old phone.
Well, I looked how much my phone would be to trade in at Carvo Warehouse, and I think I told you £4.
Yeah, nice.
So for the price of £4, then you can help stop this illegal logging, which is a massive problem because deforestation accounts for about 17% of global carbon emissions. It's the second biggest contributing factor.
After what, Nick?
After what? Carbon.
What's the worst thing for carbon?
The worst thing. Oof, I should know this, shouldn't I?
Well, don't imagine it's obvious, isn't it? I don't know. I'm guessing it's
I
obvious.
think it's transportation.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's what I'd have gone. Good. Okay. Good. Yeah. No. Nice.
I genuinely didn't know that. I just, just intuitive,
But anyway, right. So this is a good news story. Go and have a look at Rainforest Connect. I don't know if it's rainforestconnect.com.
It's rfcx.org.
And they also have a really cool app which I downloaded because they have these phones now that listen to the rainforest. If you get their app, then you can listen to all the different rainforests that are set up in. You can listen to the live sounds of that rainforest.
So animals.
So you can be like, I want to listen to Borneo as I go to sleep live.
Okay.
Which is quite cute.
Nice.
I think it's
Unless
cute.
there's a massive storm, in which case you won't go to sleep.
Oh no, I quite like that.
Okay. Good. And that is our good news story this week. Has anyone got any other good news they'd like to share? I mean, have you got any other classics?
What about any other stories?
I haven't got any.
Well, we were just talking today about
Nothing.
about landlords putting cages in front of thermostats.
Oh my god, that is unbelievable. That's the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
So, if you want to, I don't know, not have the heating blast out at 30 degrees, then obviously you want to have the access to your thermostat and then turn it down to something more comfortable, 18, 19.
I haven't told my wife how to use our thermostat, so she just doesn't know. And so
it's also what most couples argue about.
yes, no, because we did
AK,
some
like
work,
our,
we did some
research
work.
that we
But
figured
but no, she has no idea. So when she wants to turn on the heating, she has to call me.
Because you can do it from your phone because you've got the what do you have, Nest?
And I mean, it's not difficult. She could Google it, but she hasn't.
Well, this is what annoyed me about this story because Nick, you sent me and James a link to the story, and I was looking at the thermostat with the little cage over it, and it's a Perspex cage. It's a Nest thermostat. He can just control that from his phone.
Well, obviously he can't, because
Because-
otherwise he would.
Yeah,
I mean,
depends who's registered the app, to the
Yeah,
thermostat. Yeah.
yeah, agreed. Agreed. I mean, or he could just get an electrician to unplug it and then just put the heating on.
Unscrew it. And, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, interesting tenants. Well, no, interesting landlords. Tenants,
Yes.
fine. But
Yes.
if
I
you've
wonder what
got-
the legality of it is.
Well, I guess it's
Sure,
it
I
depends,
think-
it depends who's paying for the energy bills. I think if the tenant is paying for the energy bills, then he can set whatever he wants.
Yes.
If the landlord is paying for the energy bills, then I guess it's up to them. I don't think it's fair.
But you'd have to
Judge
disclose
me.
that in an agreement, I would have thought, James, that as part of this, temperature we set between this and this.
I
and-
might do that at home. I might put our thermostat in the cage just in case
She
Laura
doesn't
does
even
learn.
know how to use it,
Just in
James.
case she learns how to use it.
You have a 2-month-old baby.
But I tell you, where landlord to tenant monitoring is good is on some of the new air source heat pump and ground source heat pump systems that are used in multi-dwelling occupancy social housing properties, for instance, because it allows the tracking of how tenants use their heating systems. So if, say, tenants complain, my heating bill is really high this month, then landlord could go, well, look, actually, you've set the heating up to 28, 29 degrees. You don't
So
need
it's your
to.
fault. Yeah. Guess what's happening tomorrow? I'm having my smart meter installed. It's a big day in my.
Smets 2.
Are you going
Sounds
to document it?
Oh god,
take
like you
photos
wouldn't
of it?
believe. I'm gonna film him.
Selfie
Or
yourself.
her.
Selfie yourself. It.
I'm. Oh can't wait.
It's going to be exciting.
Oh, like you wouldn't believe.
Should we talk about smart meters?
No.
Not now.
Not now,
But no, once I've got them, I can tell you how they work.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, I think that's it for this week because we're just talking rubbish now. So we're going to do another one next week is the plan, and we'll do a couple more before Christmas, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll carry on in the new year. So, but that is it for this week.
I'd like to say thank you for James for putting a jumper over his obnoxiously neon shirt this week.
I would like to say, bugger off. Anyway, right, guys, thanks very much for watching.
Bye now.